Determine the left-sided limit and the right-sided limit and the two-sided limit as x approaches 1 of 1 over x squared minus x. Each of these involves the limit as x approaches 1 of 1 over x squared minus x. The first thing to do is try plugging a 1 in for each of the x's. That'll give 1 over 1 squared minus 1. 1 squared is a 1, so it'll be 1 over 1 minus 1. And 1 minus 1 is a 0, giving 1 over 0. That 0 in the denominator is not actually a 0, since x is only approaching 1, it doesn't reach a 1. A non-zero number over 0 is a positive or negative infinity. The sign of the infinity often depends on which side the limit approaches from. Therefore, we will have to work out the two one-sided limits separately. We have the left-sided limit, indicated by the negative superscript on the 1, and the right-sided limit, indicated by the positive superscript on the 1, of 1 over x squared minus x. Let's start with the left-sided limit. The first thing to do, since it's going to produce a 0 in the denominator, is to factor the denominator. There's a common factor of an x. And if we factor that x out, it'll be times x minus 1. We're on the left side of 1 here. And the left side of 1 means less positive than 1, like 0.99. If we plug that in for x and specifically look at the x that's going to make the 0, which is the x minus 1, a number that is less positive than 1, like 0.99 minus 1, will be a negative number. So this will result in 1 over, plugging in 1 for x will be 1, and then plugging 1 in for the x minus 1 will be 1 minus 1, which will be a 0. But x is less than 1, like 0.99, so it'll be negative, and it'll be a negative 0. So we have a positive 1 over 1 times a negative 0, which will be a negative 0. A positive over a negative is a negative, and a non-zero over a 0 is an infinity. So the left-sided limit will be negative infinity. The right-sided limit will be analyzed in a similar fashion. We will need to factor so we can see the factor that's making the 0. Let's factor an x out. And it's the x minus 1 that's making the 0 when x approaches 1. We're approaching from the right side here, so x is greater than 1, like 1.01. And if plugged in for the x minus 1, it will be a positive. So we have a 1 over plugging 1 in for the x will be 1. Plugging a 1 in for the other x will make a 0, except we're on the right side of 1. It's slightly larger than 1, so it'll be a positive 0. So in the numerator we have a positive 1. In the denominator we have 1 times a positive 0, which will be a positive 0. A positive over a positive is a positive. A non-zero over a 0 is an infinity. And we end up with the right side limit being positive infinity. The two-sided limit depends on the results of the two one-sided limits. They do not match each other. Therefore, the two-sided limit will be does not exist. And there's the results of the three different limits.